ask a question?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, so let's start talking a bit about your childhood. Can you tell me where you were born and what your family was like?
Yeah, I was born in Bombay, now called Mumbai, and we lived there in Chira Bazaar. I don't if you're familiar with Bombay, but it's like an old Bombay area, and I lived there for 3 years. Not even 3 years because my dad passed away a little before I was 3. So my grandparents, my dad's father and his brother used to live in Ahmedabad, and they had 4 children. So they said that why don't you come and live with us? And that way, because my mom was alone with 2 little kids, and those days it was very hard for women to kind of bring up kids. They were not necessarily allowed to work, but it was taken for granted that women could take care of the children. That was the society that we grew up in. So we moved to Ahmedabad and we lived there. For all my schooling and everything was done in Ahmedabad.
So can you tell me a little bit about the education you had there?
The education wise, I went to what is it called? Like a kindergarten, but it was more of a
Primary school?
no. It's what is it called? There's a Montessori school system, and so I went there. Then I went to where my cousins were going. My brother was going, so the St. Xavier's High School. Went there, and the first 3 years of my schooling was in Gujarati medium because in Ahmedabad in Gujarat they believed at some point that everything is going to be in Gujarati, so you better change to Gujarati medium. So I went for the first 3 years of my life. I studied everything, history, geography, everything was in Gujarati. So I studied in that language. Math was in Gujarati. And then in the 3rd year, all of a sudden they found out that Gujarati is not going to be sustainable and English is the way to go. So they transferred me to an English medium class in the same school, but there were like 2 different divisions. Gujarati medium, so you had everything in Gujarati, and English medium, you had everything in English. It was like that. So I transferred to the English medium, and it was a hard transformation because everything I learned was like even the tables we were, for example, like in the math class, we used to have to recite multiplication tables out loud. So I had learned it in Gujarati. Now I had to kind of say it in my mind in Gujarati when I was narrating it in front of the class and translate it into English and say it. So I got into trouble because it was taking me longer and they thought I didn't know what I was talking about, but that was the reasoning. But I was never a very good student, to be honest. School I got into trouble from the time I was a little child because I was too independent. I was like, you cannot tell me what to do, you show me what to do, and that doesn't work out very well when you're a kid growing up. Especially when there are 6 boys in the house, you have to do what the parents tell you, otherwise it causes a big problem in the family. So I had a rough time growing up. But I never in my growing up life, I never felt like I missed out on my not having a father because my uncle and my grandparents, they were extremely nice, extremely accommodating, and we grew up as one family, basically.
That's great. What did being a Zoroastrian mean to you as a child? Was there like a big Zoroastrian population where you were growing up?
Big what? I'm sorry.
What did it mean to be a Zoroastrian?
Oh, Zoroastrian, okay. It wasn't a big deal because our friends were Zoroastrian, though in India it's like a mixed community. You don't think of yourself as Zoroastrian or this or that. Like we had neighbors who were Muslims, who were Hindus, who were Christians, and we all played together. So it was not a big deal at all in that respect. Besides just learning about our Navjot and stuff like that, that was a religious part. Otherwise, we were not. I mean, we had to do after our Navjot, we were expected to do kasti every time you went to the bathroom. I mean, that was like one of the necessities that we grew up with. So you kind of held up going off to the bathroom also sometimes. You don't want to do the prayers and all that. But as kids, you kind of go through that kind of stuff.
So how old were you when you first moved to the U.S.?
When I first came here, actually my brother was here already. And because I used to get into trouble, everybody felt like, why don't you go somewhere, different atmosphere, different change of place. Maybe you'll make something of yourself. So my mom and I, we came here in 1973. So I was about 19, 20 years old at that time.
Yeah, so can you walk us through like the different emotions, what it was like moving here, how you changed the scenery?
Moving here, I hated it here. I did not like it here. I was registered to go to school for studying about auto mechanics because my background was in automobile engineering. So I figured I always wanted to be in business. That was just my dream because I was just my mindset was to be in control of my life. I did not want somebody else to tell me what to do. And maybe that's how I grew up, and that's probably what pushed me into making a decision about getting into business. But so I wanted to go to school to study about auto mechanics because with an engineering background, what you do is you end up working for a bigger company, like any automotive company or a dealership or something like that. And I did not want that. I wanted to do something on my own. So I went to school for auto mechanics for about it was about 2.5 years school. I did auto mechanics and body and fender repairs with 2 different courses, and I finished them both.
So what was your schooling like? Was it easy as a foreigner?
No, it was very hard. At first, I had some experiences which are kind of interesting. It might sound a little racist, but when I came here, I was told that my school was like 80% black people. They were not kids because this was just when the I think Vietnam War had ended, and a lot of people who were getting out of the army were getting free schooling, and they were in the school also. So a lot of them were ex-service people, and most of them were young. I was like obviously I was 20, but they were like in their mid-20s or 30s, 40s in that age group. But I was one of the younger people there, and I was told at that time there was a fashion. This is a kind of an interesting experience. I don't know how many hours you have. I can talk about a lot of stories like this, but they used to have this Afro hairstyle. It would be kind of like this, but with curly hair, and they would have like that. You must have seen that.
Yeah,
So, and in those days they had a comb, which was like a pick. They call it a pick, and they would have, most of them would have it in their pocket, in the back, and the handle would stick out. I thought it was a knife that they were carrying because I was told that, my brother warned me, this is not India, don't get into trouble, don't get into fights. There are people that carry knives and guns and this and that, so be careful. And so I was like, I mind my own business and stuff. And there was this one guy, he was a big guy. He was about probably 6'4" or so, big build. I mean, I felt like a midget in front of him. And he always kept pushing me. And first of all, I had a hard time understanding the accent because American English is a little different from Indian English. And then in those days, the English was very different. They called it jive. And there were terms that you could not even figure out what it meant if you just knew basic English. So I had a rough time understanding. So I kept to myself. I just mind my own business, did my own stuff. And at that time, because I did not like it, I took a full-time job, and I was a full-time student also. So I was working and studying 8 hours and 8 hours. So I kept myself busy because that would kind of make me spend my time. Days would go by fast. So that's what I was doing. And this guy kept pushing me, and one day he just, we were just between classes and I was walking somewhere, and he kind of pushed me and said, hey, he wanted some money, and he said, give me some scratch. I think that's the word he used. And I didn't know what that was. And I said, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, leave me alone, I'm minding my business. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And he kept his hand on his waist. I thought he was reaching for his knife. I don't know what happened to me, and I kind of, something happened in my head, and I just had to literally jump up and punch him. And this big guy just fell down flat. I thought he was dead. And I got scared, and I started running because I didn't want to kill someone. And then I just started running, and all these guys, they caught me, and the principal of the school came, and they took me in the office, and it was like, what are you doing? Like, you're a foreigner, you can't do stuff like that here. And I said, he was going to pull a knife on me. I had to protect myself. And he said, nobody carries knives here in school. And I said, yeah. I said, he was reaching for his knife. They all have knives in their back pocket. And he said, no. So he went out and checked, and then he brought the comb, and he showed me the handle was sticking out. And I thought that they were all carrying knives, and that's how it was just natural for me to think like that. And so he gave me a big lecture, and then he kind of said that you cannot do stuff like that, you cannot hit someone. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do if somebody's like, it's like a matter of my life? And he said, no, nobody carries knives and this, that. So that was it. And surprisingly, that guy became a good friend of mine. He was kind of a bully kind of a guy, but I guess that's how we treat bullies. But he was kind of like a bodyguard for me. So, and then throughout the schooling, I never had any problems with anyone after that.
So I know you mentioned you moved back.
So that was one experience in that. Then I started working at a place, and I was working as a electronic technician. And I didn't have a clue about electronics, but that was the time that they had openings for those kind of jobs. So one of my brother's friends was an electronics engineer, and he was working at this place. So he said, really, I need somebody in my place. And I said, I don't have a clue about electronics. He said, just make up a story that you worked somewhere. And I said, but I don't have a clue on what to do also. So one day he came with a broken circuit board, and he told me that this is a resistor. It has like lines on it. It's called a resistor. The thing with 3 legs is called a transistor. And he showed me how to solder. I had never soldered before. So he said, okay, that's all you need, and just make up some story, and when the boss calls you for an interview, just tell him you have a few years of experience in India, who's going to check in India. And so I kind of made up a story saying I worked for Bharat Electronics and gave an address and everything, and I got a job. So it was like, I got a job paying, I think it was like $350 or $450 an hour or something like that. Those days that was pretty decent for not knowing anything. So I started working at that place. I was fixing radios and clock radios. They used to have clock radios in those days. And the clock radios were, the clock was mechanical. Now you have the electronic, the digital clock. The old days it used to be, I don't know if you've ever seen those, there would be like a tumbler of numbers, and it would flip. And one day it was very slow, so I, being mechanical minded, I kind of took things apart and tried to see if I could fix the clock. And I fixed one, got parts from 2-3 different old radios that were laying there. Because if the clock was bad, they would throw the radios away. They never fix it. This was like all brand new. But if the clock was defective, they would just throw the whole radio away. And there was a room that was like about 3 feet from the floor, filled with all these old radios. I mean, brand new, but they were, because the clocks were bad. So I took that apart and I fixed it, and I tried it out for 3-4 days to see if it's keeping good time and all that. Then I told my boss, I said, I can fix the clocks. And he was like shocked. He says, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I've got this couple of them that I fixed, and I kept them there for 3 days. They kept good time. And he was really thrilled because there was a lot of wastage that could be used up in a productive way. So all these people who had 20 years of experience and working there in the office, they would come to me and give me the clocks to fix anytime that. So I had a nice job. Right away I got a raise and everything. I had a good job doing that. And then I finished my schooling. I had that job all the time that I was schooling. And I used to live in Hickory Hills. Commerce used to live in Hickory Hills at that time, which is very close to Palos Hills. And from there I would go to school in, it was like just by the city, Norwich, Illinois. And then I would go to work in the afternoon in Elk Grove, and then I would come home. So I was driving almost close to 100 miles every day. And Rukhsana and Zenobia were little that time, and they would wait for me to come home and play with me, and I would carry them both in my arms. They were that small at that time. But it was a nice time growing up and everything. But then when I finished my schooling, then I applied for a job as a auto mechanic, and one of my boss was like really upset when I was working. He says, "I'll give you a raise. Why are you changing your field? You can work inside, indoors. You want to work in the in the shop, and you want to work outside. And being a mechanic, you're exposed to different weather, and you're not going to make a lot of money." And I said, "That's my dream, so I just want to follow that." So I kind of left that job and started working. And actually, before I left my job, I met my wife. She used to work at the place where I used to work before. And so met her, we got married, we had a child. And before we got serious, I told her, I said, my dream is to go back and live in India. I'm not going to live here. And she makes fun of me now. She says, yeah, I was young, I was stupid, I was in love, so I said yes to everything. And we did move back.
Yeah. And how old were you when you moved back to India?
When I moved back, probably I was 23 years old or so, 23, 24.
So walk me through the process that made you move back to India. Because you had a job here, you were getting comfortable here, so what made you decide?
I was never comfortable here. I never liked it here. All through, I never really liked it here. And so my goal was always to go back. And I had studied here, so I had bought tools from here, and I figured that when I go back there, I would be like 10 years ahead of anybody else there, because here everything was so much more advanced. Yeah. And it was. So that was a big plus for me when I went back, because my business was, just started booming real good, right away almost.
So what was it like going back to India after living here? Did it change anything? Was it different than the first time?
No, I liked it because I had grown up with all these friends of mine, and it was really hard for my wife because she was born in Minnesota.
Right.
She had never been anywhere except for Minnesota and Illinois. And I remember the first time we met, she had no clue about India, and she was like, she thought that, in those days they used to show movies about India, and it was a lot of poverty. And she asked me, like, do you have cows walking in your house? And I said, cows in my house? Like, we live on the second floor, like, there's a cow going to come up there. But that was the impression that people here had in those days. And probably maybe some people, now it has changed a lot. A lot of it has changed, because a lot of people from here also go for work and stuff, so they're exposed to how advanced everything is there also. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yeah. So then eventually you decided to move back here, right? So walk me through the decision to come back here.
I had different businesses there, 2 different businesses. The problem is property is very expensive, and we did not have any money from our family. We weren't very rich or anything, so we didn't have any resources. Whatever I had was whatever I had. It was like there was nothing no big amount of money that our parents had saved up for us or anything like that. We were not born rich. We were not in a we were middle class family kind of. So, we never could afford. I could never think of buying property. So, and there the leasing laws were very strict. So, if you lease a property from someone, the landlord cannot increase the rent. You could live there for 50 years and they cannot increase the rent. That's how the laws were. So nobody wants to rent their property. So when I wanted to start a business, I had to go in partnership with someone who had a property. So I had to go in partnership with this person who had property, and he had a garage also. And I said my background is this, and we met through some common family friends, and so that's how we started the business. And at one place I was doing very well, and I kind of got taken advantage of because I never paid attention to the financial side. I was more into the work aspect of it, and wanted to build the business, and the business was doing very well, and I never paid attention to the financials. And then I found out that I'm not making any money here, and so then I started looking for another place, and a lot bigger place was available, and so I started with him, and that's where I had we had a lot bigger place. We had like 30 some employees, like I had mentioned earlier, and we were doing very well, because we were booked for almost a month ahead of time, and for the work to be taken in. So business-wise, it was very good, but a lot of corruption, a lot of fights I ended up with because I never gave in to that, and the employees were nice, but they were like, when you're too good, they take your goodness as a weakness, and I learned that the hard way. And eventually, one day I just kept giving in, and I felt like, these people don't have anything in their lives, so why not? But they take take advantage of the situation, and they went on a strike. And when they went on a strike, it kind of hurt me personally really bad. In fact, I still feel, when I talk about it, because that was like my dream. I had to give up my dream to be there. And and it started, when I saw that, it started affecting me mentally, physically. I started having epileptic attacks from that. And so eventually, we had 3 little kids at that time. My 2 other kids were born there. So, we just decided that this is no way to live. I'm not even 30 years old, and I cannot go on like this. So we decided to come back.
Yeah. So coming back the second time, was it any different than the first time? Was it easy?
It was not easy because of my health issues. It took me a long time to get used to that, and it was kind of a failure, accepting failure in my life. That was the hard part of it. That my dreams were not coming true, and I had to give all that up and just do whatever my fate is, kind of like give up on that kind of stuff. So that was a hard part.
But other than that, it was easier than the first time, like integrating back in the American culture?
No. I was, because I was not well, I was sitting at home, I was playing Pac-Man all the time. I was very good at it. I became really good at it. But no, I just, there was nothing else I was doing. I was just playing with the kids because we had a lot of kids at home. We had 3 kids. When we came back, I think my brother Farhad was born then too. And Rashmi was born too, because, Rashmi was born too. My youngest son was 6 months old. Shazad was 6 months old when we came back here. So, and Rashmi is a little older than him. So. But no, it was a very exciting time of my life.
So how long after coming back did you open your own business?
It was almost a year and a half or so, I think. I don't remember exactly. That time of my life, I kind of, some of the things I probably forgotten because of the medication and everything. And I kind of have patchy ideas about it.
Was opening your own business hard? How is it different from opening your own business in India?
It was very hard. We were looking for a place. First of all, I started looking for a job because it was a rough time to do anything. And I couldn't find a job. Nobody would hire me because I didn't have any experience here. That was the big thing. And finally, I said, you know what, I have to do something on my own because I know I've done it before. It was in India, but I had done it and I was successful there, so I can do it here. And so we found a place in Oakbrook, and it was a gas station and an auto repair shop. And obviously we couldn't afford to pay anyone, so my wife used to pump gas and I used to fix cars. That's how we started out. And in those days it was like a full service gas station, so when you go to fill up gas, somebody comes out and fills up gas in your car, they clean your windows, check the oil, all that kind of stuff. That was just taken for granted. That's how you get your gas filled up. Now it's like everything is self-service, changed all that stuff.
Right.
But before, that's how it used to be. And the cars were a lot bigger in those days. In the 60s, 70s, cars were huge cars. So whenever we got a customer, a car that was towed in, which was very big, my wife would sit in the car, I had to push it to get it in the bay so we could work on it. And we had to wait for a good customer who would come and help push the car because it was too big for one person to push. And so but that's how we survived. We kind of, and after a year or so, things started picking up, and then we could hire someone, and gradually things started getting better. And we were there for 5 years, and I wasn't very familiar with lease requirements and stuff like that. So my lease got over, and the landlord, they doubled my rent because they figured that, you know, I've established a business, I can't go anywhere because I'd lose all that business. So they figured, what's he going to do? So they doubled my rent. So I figured if I can pay that kind of money, then I might as well buy something of my own. And that's when this place was in the market, and we looked a lot. We asked a lot of different people to go in partnership and stuff like that, and it was a very hard time to get the place because we had to get financing for it, and we didn't have any money saved up. So, you know, whenever you go to get financing, you need 20% down. And first time I went to the bank, first of all, they wouldn't even talk to me because we didn't have any kind of down payment, so they wouldn't even bother. On the phone, they would ask, like, how much do you have down? And I said, if I had down, I wouldn't come to the bank. What are you there for? And the bankers would say, that's not how it works. You know, you've got to have something down on your side, otherwise we won't give you a loan. And that's a whole different story again. I was going to go in partnership with someone because, you know, when you're in business and you're doing well, people see that you're doing well, and everybody tells you, oh, if you ever need to buy something, let us know, we'll invest money and this and that. And so finally, when I was looking for this place, I started asking people, and everybody was like, that's a lot of money. I needed $150,000 at that time for down payment. And everybody was like, oh, we got money invested and we can't take it out and this and that and all kinds of excuses. It was a very humbling experience because it was like begging for money literally from people. And finally, one person I knew, I still know him very well. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but you would know anyway. But he was willing to go in partnership, and he wanted 50% of the business and property for investing that $150,000. And I was desperate because I had 3 little children. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any options, so I agreed to that. And we had like a month and a half left before closing, you know, for the closing for the property. And he backed out. he backed out at that time, and he said, like, I cannot do it because you have a gas station. If there's a leak in the gasoline, it was like a big deal. That in those days they didn't have any kind of financing for it, and I would be personally responsible, and I'm risking more than $150,000 if something like that happens. So I said, you're telling me now at the last minute that when the closing is to be done? And I went to the Darbar Mail one day, and one of our customers asked me, so how's your new property thing going? And I said, it's not going good because the partner I had is backing down. And she told me, she says, why don't you ask people in the community? And I said, I have, but nobody wants to give me any money because I don't have any equity. I don't have a house that they can take or anything that they can, I don't have any guarantee for their money. So how can I ask? She said, why don't you ask people? You're honest, you're hardworking, you'd be surprised. So I said, how much would you give me? Right there, I said. And she said, I'll give you $50,000. That was my first opening. And she said, I'm going to charge you 2% more than what the bank charges you. And I was so desperate. And in those days, interest rates were like 16%, 17%, and 2% over. I said, whatever. This is an opening. So I went and told the banker, I said, I got somebody who will give me $50,000. He was like, be reasonable. People don't give money just like that. Don't get your hopes up. And I said, no. I said, this has got to work. And I said, I've got 3 little kids. This is my only way out, and it has to work. And he says, well, I wish you all the best, but don't get your hopes up because you still have to come up with $100,000 more. And then I started asking people. I said, I've got $50,000. How much will you give me? Somebody said $5,000. Somebody said $10,000. I started getting that money, putting it in the bank. And my banker was like just shocked. He said, nobody gives money like that. And finally I had the money, down payment, and we closed on the property. And fortunately, when I think about it, I don't have a partner. So when those adversities work, they work in your favor, but at that time you don't realize that. But in the long run, you learn that, it's to my advantage because now I own a property which is worth millions of dollars. So, it's a big plus in that way. But it was a rough time. In fact, going back when I first started my place in Oakbrook, that was an interesting experience too because we had a little bit of money that we had to give for the rent, advance for the rent and stuff like that, and I had to buy some tools to start the business. And the place was filthy. We had to clean up. I remember my wife and I, we just was on the floor scraping the floor because it was like that thick of grease and grime and stuff like that. Nobody had ever cleaned anything. But when you first start a gas station, when you want to buy gas, the trend is that you have to give an advance for the gas. So when this man comes up, he was an Italian guy. I always remember him. I had a lot of people who helped me on my way, and he was one of them. He was, and he said, "Well, you're going to buy some gas from me? I have been supplying gas here." And I said, "Yeah, John, sure. I don't have anybody else. I can buy it from you, as long as you give me a good price." He said, "Yeah, I'll give you a good price. You know how it works?" And I said, "No." I said, "I've never done this before. So how does it work?" He said, "You got to give me advance for the gas that I'm going to." That's the way it works everywhere. Either you give me a cashier's check or cash. And I said, "How much?" He says, "It'll be $10,000. I said, "I don't have $10,000. So he said, "Well, you can't have gas." I said, "Okay, I won't have gas. I'll just fix cars, and once I get that money, I'll open up the gas station there." So he's standing there looking at me, and he says, "You look like somebody I can trust." He sticks his hand out, shake my hand, tell me that you will pay me, I'll give you the gas, and you pay me when you order the next load of gas. I said, sure. I said, once I have the money from selling the gas, I'll give that to you. Well, for 5 years, we never had a contract. Not like a form that you made me sign. we never had a contract or anything. Everything was done on a handshake. And about four years later, after we started this, he brings his son. And he says, Hosi, he says, I want you to meet Barry. This is my oldest son, and he's going to take over the business, and he's going to run the business now. And he told Barry that this is Hosi, and this and that, and he's been working with me for the last 4 years and all that. A week later, Barry comes dressed in a suit and three-piece suit and all that stuff, and he's like showing me all these big papers. He said, sign these papers. And I said, what is that? He said, it's a contract for you to buy gas. I said, we never had any contract. Why would you want a contract now? That's the way my dad did business, and this is different now. It's not going to work like that. So I kind of felt a little hurt, because I felt like, all of a sudden this new guy comes in and he doesn't trust me. So I called up John and I told him, I said, is there some problem? And he says, why? What do you mean? What are you worrying about, Hosi? And I said, no, Barry came and gave me these papers and said, sign these papers, otherwise you won't get any gas. What? I said, yeah. Okay, just hold on to it. I'll stop by tomorrow. I said, okay. Next morning he comes by with Barry, and Barry's standing there like a little 5-year-old kid who was being punished or something. He's standing in a corner. John is like, give me those papers. So I gave him the papers and tore it up, threw it on the floor. Barry, pick them up. And I said, John, you don't have to do that. I don't want you to embarrass him in front of anyone. No, he has to learn. He says, when people are honest, you don't find people that are that honest with you for so many years. And he's going to ruin my business if he does like this. He says he has to learn the right way to respect people who are that honest. So that was the last time I saw Barry. He never came again. We never had a contract or anything. But that was the experience there. And then when we moved here, they supplied gas here also at that time. I always stayed with them because they always stayed with me. So it was just a mutual kind of respect for each other. But those are little things in life that you learn, and you kind of feel like we're losing that kind of personal touch and personal honesty and respect for responsibility, that kind of stuff.
So shifting gears, when did you first discover ZAC since you moved here?
ZAC, when I was here before also, but I did not have any time at that time. But later on, my kids were, obviously growing up, and so that's how we kind of got involved in ZAC. And in the beginning, even when I was there, I remember in the old place also in Oak Brook when we were there, once we had a fundraiser we had a car wash. All the kids came and we had hoses and they brought soap and this and that, and it was just more like a fun thing, and we had a car wash and we collected some money, and that was for the youth fund. I was always involved with the youth at that time, and we had a big group of young kids that time, and I remember we used to have, the kids would vote who they wanted to go take with them as a chaperone when they went for the congresses. And they would always vote for me because they could get away with a lot with me. Because I grew up like that, so I figured everybody has fun, and I wasn't that strict with the kids or anything. So I always got voted in, and I always took the kids. So that's how I got more and more involved. And we used to have sleepovers at that time. And you'd have 30 kids at our house sleeping over. The boys would be downstairs, the girls would be upstairs, and then some of the boys would go up or some of the girls would go down, and you have to scream and shout and get them all separated and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun. And what we would do is we had to, whoever hosted the evening, the sleepover, had to take the kids out for bowling or something, some activity. and then they would come to your house and they'd sleep there. Kids would never sleep. They'd like be up till 3, 4. You'd hear giggling and screaming and stuff like that. But those are the kids that grew up. They're still friends. You know, they still have connections, and some of them. It's nice to see that they're active in ZAC now. You know, I'm trying to think on a lot of these young parents now. They grew up here. Whoever grew up here, they were all like in that group, youth group. But that's how I got involved in ZAC. Then I was on the board. Then I ran for president and I won. And I think I was president twice. I was the only guy who was president twice. We did a lot of stuff when I was involved in it too. We bought the house next door that we have. And the Rivetna Hall, we call it, wasn't there at that time. So we built that. We had fundraising and built that. Custody room wasn't there at that time. My first time that I was a president, we built that. And towards the end of it, we built the Rivetna Hall. And then the next time that I was the president, we bought the house. So that was my involvement in ZAC. And we had Congress. We had like a North American Congress here. We had a youth congress here. So it was pretty active. Pretty active. I hope that continues with guys like you when you grow up, get involved. But that's the way you keep growing your community, your religion, everything, your values.
Yeah. So I know how you said how you were involved in ZAC. So how do you feel like the Zoroastrian community and ZAC has positively benefited you?
Oh yeah, my values, my ethics, everything. I mean, it's from what our religion teaches us. That's that's my life. I feel. I hope. I mean that's all. That's our background. That's how we grew up. We had even growing up, like my grandfather was very strict, but very strong in ethics and values. I mean, very, very strong. I remember he used to work in a textile mills, and he was a weaving master. There was like a whole department called weaving, and he was in charge of that. And one day there was something again. It was kind of similar to that Barry experience because his boss who had hired him was getting older, and the son took over the textile mills, and he was running it. And he told my grandfather to do something that was not very ethical according to him. And he picked up a chair and threw it at the guy, and he walked out. He said, "To hell with you! I don't need this job." And he went home. And then the boss took his son and brought him to our house and apologized in front of everyone and made him come back and stuff like that. So those kind of things, when you see that when you're growing up, they kind of become part of you.
Right. So one last question. Looking at all your life and all your traveling from US and India, is there anything you would change about it?
Anything I would change? No, I have not made a single mistake in my life. I feel like that because everything that happened, even the negative things, they happen because they make you who you are. And so I feel like I have not really made any mistake in my life. So a lot of people might not agree with that, but that's the way I feel about it. Because that's who I am. I mean, whoever you are is because of the experiences you've gone through. And so that's, I don't know if that answers your question. It's very short, but.
So thank you for your time. And thank
Oh,
you
you're
for
welcome.
doing the interview.
You're welcome. Wish you all the best.